More than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and about 40% couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency if one hit tomorrow. But the families who break that cycle almost always point to the same thing, and it's not income or inheritance or getting lucky in the market. It's a specific system their parents ran when they were between 5 and 10 years old. It takes about 5 minutes a month, costs almost nothing, and it rewires how a kid sees every dollar for the rest of their life. So how does something that simple actually change a kid's entire financial future? The system starts with 3 jars on a kitchen counter. One labeled spend, one labeled save, and one labeled give. Every time your kid earns money, whether that's from chores or a lemonade stand or birthday cash from grandma, they sit down with you for 5 minutes and split it across those 3 jars. When they're young, between 5 and 9, you decide the split: 40% to spend, 40 to save, 20 to give. The amounts don't matter yet. What matters is the ritual. The kid physically holds the money, counts it out, and drops it into each jar while you watch. That's the entire system at this age. The spend jar is theirs to use however they want. If they blow it on candy the next day, that's fine. And if they let it build for a few months to buy something bigger, even better. The save jar doesn't get touched. It just sits there and grows. And the give jar goes to something outside themselves, whether that's a church basket, a school fundraiser, or a charity catalog where $10 buys a chicken for a family overseas. Now this sounds basic, and it is. But here's what it's actually doing underneath. A kid who only gets handed money and spends it learns one thing: that cash exists to disappear. A kid who splits it 3 ways every single month learns something completely different. They learn that money has jobs, and spending is only one of them. But pay attention to what happens next, because this is the part that changes everything. Around age 9 or 10, the system shifts. You stop deciding the split and you hand that power to the kid. The giving percentage stays locked at whatever you've agreed on. That's non-negotiable. But now they choose how much goes to spend and how much goes to save. And you might think they'd dump everything into the spend jar. That's the obvious move. But this is where the secret weapon kicks in. You become the bank, and the bank pays interest. Here's how it works. Say your 10-year-old earns $20 this month from chores. $2 goes straight to the give jar if you're running 10%. Now they've got $18 and a choice. They can spend all 18 and earn 0 interest, or they can save all 18 and earn $5 from you at the end of the month, or they can split it however they want, knowing the interest only applies to whatever lands in the save jar. You set the rate high enough that the reward feels real, especially when the dollar amounts are small. Make it absurd at first if you need to. The point isn't financial realism. The point is that when your kid checks the save jar at the end of the month and you hand them $5 extra they didn't work for, something clicks. They just watched money make money on their kitchen table. No textbook, no lecture, no app, just a jar and a parent who kept their word. And here's what happens over the next few months. The kid starts doing math at the dinner table. They start asking questions like, if I skip buying that toy this month, how much will I earn on that money instead? They're running opportunity cost calculations in their head at age 10, which is more than most adults do before swiping a credit card. After a while, the save jar gets big enough that the interest alone covers what they'd normally spend. One wealth manager who uses this system with his own kids said they eventually started spending only the interest each month and never touching the principal. A 10-year-old figured out the same strategy that funds university endowments, not because anyone explained it, but because the jars made it obvious. And that's not even the part that researchers say matters most. A study out of the University of Michigan found that children as young as 5 already show distinct emotional reactions to spending and saving, and those reactions predict their actual financial behavior. The kids who felt good about saving were more likely to save, even when they didn't particularly want the items in front of them. That pattern held regardless of what their parents did with money. That finding matters because it means the window is real. Between 5 and 10, a kid's financial personality is forming whether you intervene or not. The three-jar system doesn't create the instinct from nothing. It catches the instinct while it's still flexible and trains it in the right direction. And the research backs this up beyond one study. Data tracking financial education mandates across multiple states found that kids who received structured money teaching showed higher savings rates and higher net worth as adults. A separate national survey found that children who had savings accounts and had their spending monitored by parents were significantly more likely to own financial assets as young adults and held more positive attitudes toward money overall. So, this isn't just a cute family activity. The jars create a feedback loop that runs on autopilot. The kid saves, sees the reward, feels the pull of compound growth, and saves more. Meanwhile, every time they choose the spend jar, they feel the opportunity cost because they can physically see exactly what they're giving up sitting right there on the counter. Some months, they'll grab the toy anyway. That's fine, because the decision itself is the lesson. They chose with full information, which is more than most adults can say about their last impulse buy. Over time, that trade-off becomes automatic, and it follows them into every paycheck, every raise, and every financial decision for the rest of their life. Most adults never learn that spending has an opportunity cost. They see their paycheck, pay their bills, and whatever's left feels like free money. The jar system kills that instinct before it ever forms. A kid who grew up splitting every dollar 3 ways doesn't look at a paycheck and think, "What can I buy?" They think, "What's the job for this money?" And that single shift in thinking is worth more than any savings account or investment app you could hand them at 18. But here's the detail that even most people who teach the jar method completely miss. The Give jar is not charity decoration, it's the most important jar in the system. When a kid puts money into the Give jar every single month, they're practicing a belief that they have more than enough, so much that they can afford to give some away. Maybe it's $5 toward a classmate whose family lost their house in a fire. Maybe it's $10 to a catalog that buys livestock for families overseas. The amount is irrelevant. What matters is the act. That's not a financial skill, but an identity. And it's the opposite of how most adults relate to money. Think about it. The default setting for most people is scarcity. There's never enough, and I need to hold on to everything I earn. But a kid who gives 10% of every dollar they've ever received doesn't grow up with that wiring. They grow up believing they're the kind of person who has excess, and people who believe they have excess make completely different financial decisions than people who believe they're always one emergency away from falling behind. The wealthy families who use this system understand something that spreadsheets can't capture. The Give jar trains abundance, the Save jar trains patience, and the Spend jar trains intentionality. All three working together build a relationship with money that no single lecture or textbook can replicate, and it starts with 3 containers on a kitchen counter and 5 minutes a month. More than half the country can't handle an unexpected bill. But the fix doesn't start with a raise or a side hustle or a better budget app. It starts with a kid, 3 jars, and a parent willing to play banker once a month. If you want me to go deeper on more money principles that actually build wealth over a lifetime, comment below and hit that subscribe button.